Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. This is actually coming out a little bit earlier than I had planned just because I finished the book in a very timely manner, but today is going to be my review slash vlog of The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, which was the April selection for Reading Booktubers' favorite books, courtesy of Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews. So I was really happy to have Matt participate in this and send me a clip about why he recommended The Bone Ships. And all I'm going to say before we get into this is that this book was quite a journey for me. I'm gonna leave my rating and final thoughts for the end just because I kind of want everybody to be able to go through the progression with me because it was very interesting. So first of all, we are gonna hear from Matt about why he recommended this book to me.
Hey Grace, thank you so much for having me on your channel. I super appreciate being invited and getting to pick a book for you. And I love doing this for people, and I put a lot of heart into my picks. So when you told me to do this, I went and checked out your Goodreads profile, and went and saw what kind of books that you like. And to my great pleasure, you like a lot of the same books that I like. But the one that stood out to me was that you gave a lot of 5 out of 5s to the Live Ship Trader series by Robin Hobb. And if you like the Live Ship Traders, then I suspect that you are also going to like The Tide Child by R.J. Barker. This is a trilogy that's not terribly long in the book length, but it is a seafaring tale to end all seafaring tales. And it is criminally underrated. More people need to get on top of this hype train, although I don't know that that's going to happen because these books have been out for a little while. But it is so well done. You know, Robin Hobb is famous for writing great characters, but there are amazing characters in this book that you're going to fall in love with from the start. This plot takes a little bit of time to develop, but again, that's what Robin Hobb does. So once the plot really starts hitting here and the latter half of this book, you're going to fall in love with this. Or at least I hope so. But I want you to be honest if you don't like it. I want to hear your true thoughts, and I can't wait to hear them. But the plot's great. You know, the characters are amazing. You know, the world is so well put together. I love the magical elements of this. Everything that makes a great fantasy book is here in The Tide Child. I hope you enjoy, but if not, I can't wait to hear that too. Enjoy.
Okay, so I really like what Matt said about this book, and what I'm going to take from his clip right away is that I know he is a person that when he says he wants your honest opinion, he genuinely means it, because in his videos he always gives his honest opinion, and I do appreciate that about him and his channel a bunch. And so I think that this is actually a really fitting book for that type of kind of lead-in, even with the recommendation, because I am certainly giving my honest thoughts, and I know that Matt will probably appreciate hearing them like all the way through and how my thoughts and feelings progressed. So with that said, we are going to get into the vlog portion. This is just me popping in to say that I am about to start The Bone Ships, so I'm really excited to get into this. It's only about 450 pages long, so I'm thinking I'll try and check in about every 50 pages or so. But I will definitely let you know what my thoughts are once it gets going. And yeah, let's get to it. Okay, so immediate first impressions of The Bone Ships. I've just read one chapter. I'm not really jiving with the writing style right off the bat. I can see myself getting used to it, and I hope that's what happens. But my first impression is just that, like, the writing style itself is kind of choppy. A lot of sentences aren't complete sentences. Like, it's definitely a stylistic choice, but I find it kind of like stutter stepping and like difficult to read because the flow of it isn't intuitive to me. Like, the sentences aren't going where my brain thinks they're going, and then I have to like stop and reread it and be like, wait a second, like what? So I sincerely hope that after a few chapters I'm able to kind of settle into this type of writing style, because if I can't, it doesn't exactly bode well. Like, the ideas presented in the first chapter and the tone of the world, they're interesting. And so I really hope that I'm able to get past that. Okay, my friends, I have read just over 50 pages now, so I thought it would be a good time for an update. And I can say that I am settling in a little bit more. Aspects of the writing style still chafe on me, to be perfectly honest. I don't love it as a whole. I think one of the things that's irking me is that there's still a lot of incomplete sentences. Like sometimes I'll be reading a sentence and I think that it still must be going another way because it's not a complete sentence yet, and then it's just still not a complete sentence. So I don't know if that's something I'm going to be able to completely let go. However, I am interested in Mia's. I'm going to assume that's how you say her name. And I'm interested in where just like the general story and world building are going to go. So I'm definitely intrigued and hopefully like, I wouldn't say I'm having a bad time. So I'm definitely still on board for like where this is potentially going. Hi, honey. Okay, so I have hit the page 150 mark. I think that depending on how things go from here on out, I may do updates every 100 pages. I just didn't feel like I had that much more to say after another like 50 pages. So I waited, but so far it's been a bit of a mixed bag. So there's been some good, some like average, some bad. I did know going in that this book starts a little bit slower, so it seems like now we're ramping up a little bit more to where the plot is more really beginning. I have been a little bit like lackluster so far on how I'm feeling about it. It's more average. And so I suppose one con would be that I don't care too much about the main character, the perspective that we're in. One good thing, though, is that I have one character that I'm interested in, and that is the shipwife that our main character is serving. So there is something to be said for his perspective because there is the one character that I am very intrigued by, but I would say that she is pretty much the bright spot. I find her very interesting, and not that much else is interesting so far. So I am finding it easier to read now, which is good, than I was at the start of the book. And so I'm like gonna try and get through more of this so that I can continue to form my opinion. But I guess I'm about 30% of the way through now, and I'm feeling mixed. That's pretty much the gist of my feelings. So hopefully it will get a little bit more positive going forward. So me and Maisie are just hanging out, reading my book, and I'm feeling a lot. Okay, first of all, opening sentence. I'm page 250, give or take, right now. So another 100 pages down. And I'm feeling a lot of mixed things. There's some good news. The good news is that I have definitely found, okay, bye. Sorry, you guys don't need to see Cat, but I have found a few more characters to like, for sure. So I enjoyed the expansion of like our character base when Joran and Mias picked a new crew and everything like that. And so I'm glad that we've expanded it a bit because it does give me a few more characters to be interested in and enjoy. But still, overall, like the book, I'm liking it more as we're progressing, but it's still not doing that much for me overall, and I'm kind of trying to pin down why that is. Part of me thinks that this is going to be one of those cases where I'll be able to recognize and respect like what the book was doing, whereas it may just not be for me, because it's very true that this is a detailed and interesting and unique fantasy world that RJ Barker has built here. But at the same time, one of my complaints is that I do feel like he is not as seamless as some other authors at introducing terminology and making you feel familiar with the things in the world that he's introducing. I think that he has sometimes like changed words kind of for the sake of it that are really impacting my understanding of what's going on. And there was one sequence where the crew was learning to fire gallows bows, which are essentially great big bow and arrows or crossbows or whatever, from the ship, and the like technical terminology was so heavy that I was almost tempted to just skim that part. I was really bored. Like, I was enjoying the like character development of it and the team building, but it was bogged down by the terminology. And I have felt that way on a few different occasions where I'm like, I have no idea what's going on right now or what you're talking about, because you've just thrown a word in here that I have no idea what it means. And I would know what was going on if you had somehow given me the definition of this word, but I simply don't know what it means. And maybe like I'm not putting in enough work, but I also don't want to have to put in that much work to understand. And so there, like I said, there are still a couple of good things. Like, I think his prose has improved throughout the book, and I don't know if that's just a reflection of the state of mind of our POV character. However, I still do feel like I hate to simplify it to a like telling and not showing, but I do sometimes feel as though the internal thoughts and monologue are a little bit cut and dry. Like, the way that the main character thinks about things is like, I don't know, exposition-y and not as subtle as I might like sometimes. So I'm feeling a lot of things. I'm hoping that the ending continues to go upwards and improve, because, you know, it's not all bad for sure. I'm just feeling sort of average about it right now. And I guess I'm about halfway through at this point. So I will give you another update when I read another 100 pages. Okay, so I'm on about page 340, so not quite 100, but I am going to my parents' tonight, so I figured if I get any more reading done there, I won't have any opportunity to film it, like to vlog it, so that I would just give my update now. But on the bright side, I really do feel as though I am growing into this book the further that it goes. Currently, I'm maybe like feeling a 3.75-ish rating, maybe a 3.5. It really depends how the rest of the book goes, but I do feel as though it's like improving, and I think that it has like hit its stride. So I am very happy about that. And one thing that I do really love is how the sea dragons, oh geez. Okay. I really love how the sea dragons are described. I find them very cool. And so I think that that is, like, if that continues to be kind of like even more of a factor, of course, they do seem like they're going to be a focus in the overall series. So I can definitely see that being a strength. And I have been finding it like a lot easier to read for the last 100 pages. So it's definitely like a pleasant surprise based on how I felt at the beginning of the book. And I have like maybe 120 pages left. So depending on how I feel, I may wait until the end of the book to give a final update, but we'll see. So yeah, I am really happy with how things have progressed from my last update. Okay, so it is the next morning because I finished the bone chips last night right before bed, and I didn't quite feel like hauling myself out of bed to film a clip. However, I did settle on 3.75 stars. I really did enjoy the ending. I was definitely pleasantly surprised by how much I did enjoy like the latter parts of the book. I just can't kind of ignore all the issues and mixed feelings that I had at the beginning. So I feel like if this momentum continues going into the second book, I will enjoy it a lot more because it will have those qualities like right from the start. And kind of in hindsight, I can appreciate that I think some of the stylistic choices were a reflection of like who Joran was at the beginning of the book and how he develops throughout the book. And it's sort of one of those things where it's like I can objectively see that and respect what R.J. Barker was doing, but I still didn't like I didn't enjoy the beginning of the book too much. So that's where the rating comes in because yeah, like I said, I think it got a lot stronger. I started to tab partway through this book and I was focused on some of the kind of like eerie, ethereal feeling parts of the magic. And like, I think on the whole, this is like a low fantasy setting, even though it feels a lot more alien to our real world, but a lot of those things are sort of like what you would consider mundane things. It's just that they're different. So the main things like I'm gonna say Gulheim. I don't know how to actually say that word. And then you have, of course, the Archesians and or Kishon. I don't really understand the difference between those two words because they both refer to the sea dragons, but there is some really like kind of eerie otherworldly feeling to some of the magic that we haven't unpacked yet and haven't really solved the mystery of that. So that was something that I really liked. And I did enjoy like the kind of personal development of a lot of the crew and the relationships and everything. I still don't think that for me the characters are the strongest that I've ever read, though I did like them. So this book is kind of weird in that sense because on the whole it is kind of character driven. And so that's another reason why like the ending was definitely stronger because I was sort of finally on board with our characters. And yeah, I think a lot of it just kind of came together and hit a rhythm and started working a lot better towards the, I want to say the climax, but there's kind of like a couple of events that we hit near the end of the book that are all sort of involved in like a nebulous climax of the story. Of course, you have like the final event, but there's a lot leading up to that kind of should be recognized as part of the same, like it all happens kind of like 60 pages to the end. So even if it's not part of the like very, very final sequence, it all is part of the same sequence. And so I thought that was really strong. So yeah, based on how I felt at the beginning of this book, I did end up being much more positive on it than I was anticipating, which really does make me happy because I was looking forward to this book. And of course, I really did want to like it very, very badly. So I'm glad that I did end up liking it. So yeah, not a book that I loved, but definitely a book that I ended up liking. And I'm actually really glad that this was in one of these videos as a recommendation from Matt because normally I don't do this in depth of a dive into a book, like, because I don't vlog everything that I read. So I'm actually really happy that I kind of got to document this progression so that I can look back and like see how I felt about it at certain points. But yeah, let's get over to the rest of the video for some more of my final thoughts. Okay, now that we have that journey out of the way, I believe I said this in my final clip, but I am giving The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker 3.75 stars. And so this is a book that, as you can see, I had quite mixed feelings about, but I am really happy that the ending kind of brought it home for me because, of course, when somebody recommends me a book, and like I mentioned, I know that Matt would appreciate my honest opinion, I want to like it. And if I've been looking forward to this book as well, like it's one that I wanted to read on my own. And so of course I wanted to like it. And at the beginning, for the first maybe 100 pages, honestly, I was thinking, oh no, I really don't want this to be a negative review. Like, that's the last thing in the world that I want. Not because I don't want to put that out there and tell you guys how I feel about a book, but just because it kind of hurts my soul a little bit. Like, I'm trying to share something with Matt and like just with the people who have told me good things about this book. And I was really, really scared. I will tell you that. But as things progressed, it immensely helped me when we expanded the cast a little bit and I had some more people to root for, and we actually got kind of like some camaraderie going within the characters, and some of the like suggestions and dip your toe in type things where we get to see the magic, those were really cool, and that started to build for me, and the world building definitely started to fit together a little bit better for me. I still have some complaints about the fact that I think that he maybe went a little bit crazy with the terminology. There were some things that I felt just didn't need to be changed from like real world terms into fantasy terms. And I do get that there is something of like an ambiance and an environment and an atmosphere that is created by calling things differently in your fantasy world than in the real world, because it gives you that separation. But at the same time, I think that his balance for it was a little off. So that is something that bothered me throughout the whole book. However, I don't know if I just got used to his writing style or if it actually got smoother, but it got so much easier to read. This book got so much easier to read for me, I want to say around the halfway point. So maybe like 250 pages, give or take, because at first I was struggling. Like, not even as if I was reading it and not liking it, but like my brain was actually struggling to take in the sentences, like internalize them, comprehend them, and move on. Like, I was finding it very choppy. I was having to go back and reread things. And I said this in one of my vlog clips as well, but I do believe that part of that, like upon seeing the progression, I think that it does reflect on the mindset of the main character, like our POV character, and so I can respect that as a technique that he was using, but man, was I not enjoying reading from that perspective at first. It was tough. So, and like, I didn't feel that much for the POV character until quite a bit later in the book. And I think that when we started to explore some things about him, and I don't want to get into spoilers too much that were really interesting, I started to be more interested in him. I thought that at the beginning he was kind of like, I don't know, not fully fleshed out. Like, I couldn't picture him. I remember when we first heard his age, I was shocked because that's not how I was picturing him at all. I was picturing him as someone much older, but he's like 19. And I think I was picturing him as sort of like a grizzled veteran, like a hard on his luck or like down on his luck man. And he's like a kid. Like, obviously I'm not that old myself, but like 19, seriously, this was just not the image I was getting from how he was being described. And so there was a lot of confusion. Like, I was really interested in Mies, or Mies, I don't really know. But I was really interested in her. So that kept me going through the first while in the book. And I was doing my best to be interested in the plot, but there really wasn't much of one until the second half. I've heard 150 pages mentioned for when things get going. I felt that it was more like 250 pages. So it's hard to say like what I would have done with this book if I wasn't reading it for a video like this. I may have set it aside because of the fact that that first half of the book, like, Usually, I am totally fine if a plot does not get going, but I need to be invested in the characters, and I wasn't feeling that yet. And then in the second half of the book, it was kind of like all of it came. Like, okay, I was caring more about the characters. Okay, we're starting to have a plot. Like, okay, the world building's starting to fit together because I'm starting to kind of know what things mean. Like, because he doesn't explain terms really when he introduces them to you. So it was a bit of it was just a bit of a struggle for the first half. And so this is kind of where I landed on 3.75, and to some of you that may seem like a high rating, but I really enjoyed the ending. I thought it was very, very good. Another thing I wanted to mention as a complaint was sometimes I feel like RJ Barker is kind of really like exposition dumping on you, but in the sense that he came up with this cool thing. Like, for example, the way that, they call them gallow bows, but essentially like ginormous crossbows on the decks of the ships in order to do battle. Like, they are cool, and like obviously he gave a lot of thought to how they work and how people operate them and how there are teams of people, and it's very detailed, but it's almost like he said, look at this cool thing I came up with. Like, I really want to tell you about it in detail. Like, there was a passage of maybe like 3 pages where the teams were doing bow practice, and it was in like excruciating detail about how you untruss the bows and how you load them and how you aim them and how you fire them. And I was like, oh my God, I could do with this being like a couple paragraphs. Like, I get that it's like a camaraderie building, like a character team building type thing, but oh my God, was it ever boring. So like, there's just so many conflicting emotions, because there are things that I thought he did well, and then there were things where I was like, man, somebody should have told you not to put this in here, or at least not in so much detail. And there were also a lot of typos, which I was kind of surprised about, given that, as far as I can tell, this book was like originally published by Orbit. It was never self-published. And like, don't get me wrong, I understand that there are going to be things that get missed, but I think I counted like 15 typos, and at least 6 or 7 of them were spelling characters' names wrong. So that's very noticeable, because if somebody's speaking, or if you're referencing a person and there's kind of a lot of characters, you're thinking, who's that? Like, I've never heard of that person. And then you realize that like, oh, that's an existing character. It's just that their name is spelled wrong. So that's not really a criticism of the content of the book. That's just something that I noticed, because it actually did happen quite a few times. Now let's talk more positive things. So one thing that I thought was really, really cool, and this developed throughout the book, was the sea dragons. And so they call them Kishon, and they also call them Arakesian. And I don't actually understand the difference between those two terms. They seem to be used interchangeably, and so I assume they mean the same thing. But that thing is cool. Like, it's also referred to as a Leviathan, and it like truly deserves that title, because the way that its sheer size is described in the book, like, it is immense. And this thing, like, as soon as we started to actually see it, I was like, okay, yeah, I am on board. I thought that it was so cool. And there's also I'm gonna butcher this, I don't know how to say it, the Gulaim. My instinct is to pronounce it like in a French manner, but it is bird-like, and so I feel like the first syllable being gull maybe is intentional. I don't know. However, that thing is really cool, and this is sort of when I started to feel a connection to the main character, when the main character starts to befriend this creature that's also known as a wind talker, because it can sort of like control the winds, and ships will have them to like create favorable winds for them and things like that. And so once some of this stuff started being introduced, like the magical creatures, I was actually really interested in those. I think he did a great job of coming up with these concepts that he presented in a really unique way. So I really did love that. And then eventually I thought that the plot, well, there still is sort of a minimal plot. Like there's a goal that you're working towards the whole time, but it's not super fast paced. It's sort of meandering even for a shorter book. But as soon as we actually felt some direction with that goal, I thought things went well with the plot. And same with the pacing. Like as soon as we hit that point, the pacing in the latter half of the book, I was very pleased with it. And so I do have still a lot of positive things to say, but they really are primarily about the ending of the book. So yeah, tons of mixed feelings. However, I am just pleased that it ended on a high note, because that means that I am still going to continue in the series and that I am actually looking forward to reading the second book, because I feel like if the second book is able to capture that same like energy or whatever it is from the second half, I will enjoy it much more. So 3.75 stars for a whole big bunch of feelings. And Matt, I hope that you enjoy listening to my rambling, because if there's one thing that I can say about this is that it certainly evoked a lot of like emotions and thoughts in my reading experience of it. So I think that that is enough. I think that I've said what I would like to say about this book, especially with all of the vlog clips. And I really hope that you enjoyed this review. So if you have any thoughts, please leave a comment, let me know. I would be happy to discuss things about this book with you. And please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post on most Mondays and Thursdays. And as always, I will have my socials and joint Discord with Ben linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!